Hello everyone and welcome to your Premier Injuries Daily Roundup. Game week 23. What a weekend, by the way. At least 20 plus injuries or absences to try to explain. And where to start? Well, we still have one fixture remaining in round 23, and that's a Merseyside derby where Liverpool face Everton this evening. So we'll start with team news. There's reports from the Telegraph that Thiago Alcantara will be sidelined for around about a month with a hip flexor problem that hampered him last week. Now, Jurgen Klopp did reference that the Spaniard had some problems in the build-up to this game, although he wouldn't make a decision on his availability. However, it looks as if he could be missing for the next 7 matches. On the plus side, as long as Diogo Jota has come through this weekend's worth of training without any kind of reaction or setbacks, he's set to be involved in the matchday squad. Suggests that he probably won't get anywhere near that starting lineup given the amount of time he's missed. He will be severely lacking that match sharpness, but he may get introduced from the bench at some point. Elsewhere, Fabinho's expected to return following illness. For Everton, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, he was the big fitness doubt. That's a hamstring issue. Sean Dyche said he's touch and go at very best. Now, that sort of suggests that Calvert-Lewin, given his history, given his problems over the last 18 months, it probably means that he's not going to be risked. Now, Ellis Sims is an option. He spent the first half of the season on loan at Sunderland, done quite well. Or Neil Maupay could come in to start and fill that void. Now, the big news of Monday morning was an update by Tottenham on Rodrigo Bentancur. Now, they've confirmed that the South American midfielder will undergo reconstructive knee surgery after imaging confirmed he ruptured his ACL at Leicester on Saturday. Now, we will have a short, give you a little bit more detail about that and potential return to play sidelines. But following the news that Yves Bissouma has also underwent surgery on a stress fracture of the ankle, that does leave Tottenham a little bit short in the midfield. We heard from Christian Stellini, by the way, on Friday. We knew that Hugo Lloris was sidelined with that knee ligament problem, probably for around about 5 to 7 weeks. But what he did say was that the remainder of the squad remained fit and healthy. What he didn't realise at the time was Richarlison was putting out a live Instagram video which showed Yves Bissouma in the background having just had that surgery. So we can take what he says with a pinch of salt. Now, Tottenham face AC Milan in the Champions League on Tuesday night, so we're waiting for a latest update from him. Also, by the way, there's also news that Ryan Sessegnon suffered a hamstring setback in training last week. Now, that's probably going to keep him out until about maybe game week 29, the beginning of April, around about 6 weeks. Probably good news for Perisic owners, if there are many around. Apparently, there's still 20% owned there or thereabouts. Hasn't been great. Those numbers are dwindling, but he has had 2 returns in his last 3 and 3 since the restart, one of those being a double-digit return. For Crystal Palace, we've seen a late addition of James Tompkins into the Palace starting lineup. That was because Chris Richards hurt his back on the morning of the game. Now, no timeline for him. However, Patrick Vieira will have a selection decision to make, with apparently Joachim Andersen due to rejoin the team in training this week. With regards to Wilfried Zaha, he was back outside, managed a couple of sessions last week, but that was a lot of individual work in there. It'll see if he can rejoin the group this week, and he'll be assessed ahead of game week 24. But suffice to say, he shouldn't be too far. I think in maybe 24 could be a little bit early at this stage, but watch with that one. Elsewhere, Brighton, Roberto De Zerba talked about Evan Ferguson recovering from that Fabinho tackle a couple of weeks back. Now, he said it was going to be a toss-up between Dennis Undav and Ferguson for that spot up front, with Ferguson being a more out-and-out striker and attacker, but Undav being essential to the type of player that he wanted. What he didn't reveal during that press conference on Friday was that Danny Welbeck had picked up a calf injury the week before, and that's probably going to keep him out for a couple of weeks, so targeting to return hopefully before the end of February. For West Ham, good result against Chelsea after a poor start at the weekend. However, that result came at a little bit of a cost. Paquetá went off, picked up that shoulder problem. It's the same shoulder, the right-hand shoulder, the collarbone, that affected him back in October, that kept him out for around about 3 weeks. Now, he tried to continue with this, attempted to hold off a player, but felt that discomfort and was replaced. Now, the concern is here that if he did suffer some kind of partial dislocation, as he did back in October, it is something that can be monitored. It can be managed. He can wear a support to help stabilize that joint, like we've seen with Calvin Phillips in recent time. But if this is something that keeps on recurring and happening again, then ultimately the player may need to go under the knife. So watch and listen for updates with regards to that. They were also hit with another setback for Naif Agger. That was a hamstring related issue. Of course, his West Ham career has been blighted since he joined the club. First, that ankle ligament problem that he picked up in pre-season. Then he went to the World Cup, had adductor and illness issues, came back into that defence, which is looking a little bit stretched. With Kurt Zouma out and Ogbonna working his way back up to full fitness. But Agger could be facing some spell on the sidelines with a hamstring issue. At best, you want to be hoping that it's like the Timo Kehrer hamstring issue, which settled down towards the end of the week, and hence he played at the weekend. But at worst, we could be looking at least at 2 to 3 weeks with regards to that. For Newcastle, they had a 1-1 draw down at the Vitality, and that game wasn't without its problems. We all were hoping that Alexander Isak would cover from that concussion and start, which he did, but that came at the cost of Callum Wilson, who had a slight hamstring problem. Good news with regards to that, it's only a minor concern, and he should be back in game week 24, get some minutes in those legs before the Carabao Cup final. But the Magpies were forced into 3 changes. The more severe or the more concerning of the 3 was another hamstring injury for Joe Willock. He was forced off in around about that 34-35 minute mark. Now, he will be sent for an MRI scan, and dependent upon what those images reveal, we'll determine the severity of that. Now, with the Carabao Cup less than 2 weeks away, there is a red flag over his availability. Anthony Gordon, new signing in the January window, could come in next weekend, and a little bit of a change up in formation from Eddie Howe. Elsewhere, Miggy Almiron, he had his right hand stood on. Doesn't look to be too serious. I'd be very surprised if he was out of game week 24. And Alan Saint-Maxim looked as if he landed awkwardly on his right knee, jarring that. He went off again. It looked more of a precautionary measure. Some good news for Wolves. Just in case you missed it, Pedro Neto returned to the matchday squad on Saturday. That was his first appearance in the team for over 4 months. Now, he was an unused substitute. However, he's played for the under-21s on Monday in a behind closed doors game, and he was on the score sheet, I believe, after around about 8 minutes. For Aston Villa, they travelled to the Etihad. Tyrone Mings had picked up a knock in game week 22. There was no mention from Unai Emery ahead of that game. Callum Chambers coming in and taking his place. He failed a late fitness test. However, Unai Emery believes that his skipper should be back in contention game week 24. That's nothing too serious. And staying at the Etihad, of course, Erling Haaland featured highly on everybody's team due to the double game week. So they were a little bit devastated, I would say, to see the Norwegian striker replaced at half-time. Pep insists that it was a precautionary measure, given the fact that he had took a little bit of a knock, and City were cruising at the time 3-0. Ruben Diaz was also replaced at half-time, but that was because he picked up a yellow card in what was his first start since picking up that hamstring injury out in Qatar at the World Cup. Phil Foden back in the squad following that foot problem and also illness, so he got around about a 20-plus minute run-out in place of Jack Grealish. Elsewhere, a couple of quick updates. Not a great deal of detail to go on these players to be assessed. For Fulham, Willian forced off with a calf issue. Also, Alexander Mitrovic, he complained of discomfort in this ongoing foot problem that's been happening with him since back in October. He complained during the warm-up. However, he did manage to complete 80-plus minutes, but it looks like this one's going to be dragged out for a while. And I think Marco Silva may look to manage his minutes, or certainly rotate Vinicius around those busy fixture periods. For going back to Wolves, I did miss out that Daniel Podence. That's an adductor issue, out of the weekend, probably a couple of weeks. For Bournemouth, Senesi, he was forced off for the lower back injury. Thankfully, that's just impact, took a bit of a knock. Physio medical department worked on the South American during that half-time interval, but it did stiffen up during the break, and that was he was replaced. Gary O'Neill is fairly confident that he will return. For Leicester, Uli Tielemans, that was a calf issue that kept him out of the game, failed a late fitness test. And finally, we'll finish on Forest. Unusual goings on down there. First 10 minutes, 2 centre-backs, both forced off with hamstring-related issues. That was Willy Bully and Scott McKenna. So we're waiting to learn the full extent of that. But the Forest injury list, once again, has been ramped up. Now, like I say, we have a couple of shorts due to go out, so keep your eyes and ears peeled for them. As always, we have the premierinjuries.com injury table, and you can either check out myself or Jason on Twitter. You know the handles. That's it for now, and see you again very soon.